Israel's security cabinet has approved a ceasefire in its conflict with Palestinian militants in Gaza. A spokesman for Hamas also told Reuters news agency that a mutual and simultaneous truce between Hamas and Israel will come into effect at 2 a.m. local time in Israel. Israel had come under increasing international pressure to halt its campaign in Gaza. U.S. President Joe Biden told Israel on Wednesday that he expected a significant de-escalation. And apparently that de-escalation has now begun. Let's go straight to our very own Tanya Kramer. She is in Jerusalem. Tanya, let's start out. We're hearing Israel just agreed to this truce. What about Hamas? I mean, can we confirm that Hamas has also said yes to this ceasefire?
Well, Ben, the details are still coming in. So we have a confirmation right now, a statement by the Israeli Prime Minister's office that said that Israel's security cabinet has agreed to accept an Egyptian proposal, as it put it, for a mutual ceasefire without any preconditions. And it will be going into effect at an hour to be agreed upon later. And we have this news from the Reuters news agency, a Hamas official who has confirmed to them that a mutual and simultaneous truce with Israel, which will start at 2 a.m. This morning on Friday morning.
Okay, so 2 a.m. local time. That's not long off from now. And we're hearing that this came through an Egyptian mediator. This points to the fact that there has been a lot of regional as well as international pressure on both sides to come to this agreement, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think also Israel, I mean, we heard the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu this week several times saying that Israel wants to continue, that he wanted the campaign to continue. But it seems that also the pressure was mounting to come now to an end. And the Egyptians had been mediating together also with the United Nations behind the scenes. But what we are looking at now is, of course, what does this proposal entail? What kind of ceasefire are we talking about? And for the moment, at least, and I have to stress, details are still coming in, of course, is that we are talking about a quiet for quiet formula. It was said it's unconditional, but that means, first of all, this is a halt or a cessation of hostilities, and that might also tell us that maybe about some more of the details will be agreed upon or talked about later, as we've seen in previous rounds of hostilities.
And Tanya, you know as well as I do, we've been in this situation before where there have been ceasefires declared between Israel and Hamas. Those ceasefires have not held, and there's a possibility that that could happen again. So we have to, report this with a certain amount of caution, correct?
Of course, we have to watch now and see. I mean, there's still a couple of hours even here to go. We just had again sirens, alerts for incoming rockets. But we will, we'll look at on the ground what will happen at 2 a.m., whether it's going to be quiet. I think a lot of people are concerned. I talked to a couple of people today on the phone in Gaza, actually in anticipation of all the reports that there might be a ceasefire. And of course, people are certainly welcoming it, but they're also very concerned of what this will actually mean. There has been a lot of destruction, a loss of life, but what are the conditions for these ceasefire? Will there be any improvement also when it comes, for example, of the blockade on Gaza? So, and of course, will it actually stay quiet?
And, Tanya, if we compare this conflict with what we saw in 2014, that fighting lasted 50 days, 5-0. This conflict so far has lasted 11 days. The ceasefire coming much more quickly. How much does this have to do, in your opinion? You've seen these developments. How much does it have to do with the fact that we are looking at an Israeli political establishment that is that's shakier than it was 7 years ago? We also have a prime minister who's facing criminal charges.
Well, I think what we've seen, and I think that's what quite interesting also what I heard from all sides, also from people in Gaza, was a very intensive fighting, that some people have said, this 10 days or 11 days of conflict was worse than what, some days during this longer conflict in 2014. But of course, you have to look also here at the political situation. We're talking about a caretaker government in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu had not managed to build a coalition. Actually, his rivals were trying now to build a coalition. We're not quite sure at the moment where this stands. So all of this, of course, plays a role. And also on the Palestinian side, elections were cancelled. And now suddenly Hamas took over, the issue of Jerusalem and all the problems that we have been seeing, the pending eviction of Palestinian families from East Jerusalem, all these underlying issues also of this conflict that we've been seeing, we have greater tensions in the weeks leading up to this conflict here between Hamas and Israel.
Our correspondent Tanya Kramer in Jerusalem tonight with the latest on this very fluid situation. News that a ceasefire has been agreed to between Israel and Hamas, due to take effect at 2 a.m. local time. Tanya, as always, thank you.